All right, I have 135. We should probably go ahead and get started. My name is James Robertson. I'm co-chair of the Prince George's County Forestry Board. I'm going to send it over to my colleague, Dan Donahue.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. This is Dan Donahue. I'm dialing in here from down in the lower part of the county. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. So welcome everybody to the tree workshop. We have had some challenges this winter getting this scheduled. We were snowed out twice. Once was a fake snow. Sorry about that. We had a little dusting instead of inches on that last one. But here we are, and thank you for being here. We appreciate your time. And part of the mission of the Prince George's County Forestry Board is, of course, to get more trees into our beautiful county. So we've got two guests with us today that are going to share some resources to let you all know how that can happen. So if you all will introduce yourselves. Marie, I'll start with you.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. My name is Marie, and I work at MDE as the 5 Million Trees Program Officer, which I am super excited to talk more about today. And also part of my role is the Nature-Based Solutions Specialist. So I work on a different suite of natural and working lands solution here at the state.
Thank you. And I'll send it over to Leanna. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm here on behalf of the Chesapeake Bay Trust. My name is Leanna Gamori-Rubin, and I am the Urban Trees Senior Program Officer, and I manage the Urban Trees Grant Program, which I will also be telling you about today.
All right, well, once again, guests, thank you for being here. I'm going to be in the background. I think the rest of the time I will be checking the chat. If you want to drop anything into the chat, I'll let our guests know. Other than that, I think I'm going to send it over to Leanna. I believe you're kicking us off.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm going to talk with Marie for 1 second about that. I'm happy to go first, but Marie, I think your work actually frames mine. So would you be game to go first as sort of the big picture of 5 million trees, and then I can talk about how Urban Trees fits in?
Yeah, sure. I can totally go first. Great suggestion. Okay. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see this. Yes, great, awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Marie, and today I am going to talk more about the 5 Million Trees program that was officially launched last year, and go more into how you can get involved and how we're working with Chesapeake Bay Trust and other partners to really get this initiative going. So in 2021, Maryland passed legislation to plant and maintain 5 million trees by 2031. And this is additional to the trees that were originally named in the 2030 Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act. And if you're familiar with Maryland's climate action planning, that climate plan has since been updated. And I can talk more about that in a few slides. But as part of this mandate, this makes trees that are native, new tree plantings and planted after July 1st, 2021, eligible to count towards this 5 million trees goal. Part of this initiative requires at least 10% or 500,000 of these trees to be planted in urban underserved areas. And I can touch more into what this means in just one slide. So our Maryland Department of Natural Resources created this urban underserved area map that defines which regions by census tract classify as an urban underserved area. And this is based on a couple of different attributes that I've listed here on the right, and this is directly pulled from federal data. And on this map, you'll see there's orange and gray areas, and the orange areas are the qualifying regions, meaning if trees are planted in this area that first meet the 5 million trees eligibility goal, they can also simultaneously meet the 500,000 trees planted in this goal. So this is a really important part of the initiative. And this is why it's really great that we partner with organizations like the Chesapeake Bay Trust to make sure we can directly meet this need. So in terms of how that Tree Solutions Now Act and 5 million trees, how does that actually work? So we directly partner with, as I've alluded to, directly with Chesapeake Bay Trust. We also work with Maryland Department of Natural Resources, Maryland Department of Agriculture, and also our Department of Transportation. And within our sister agencies, they have either existing tree planting programs, or they've created new tree planting programs specifically for the Tree Solutions Now Act. And as part of these tree planting programs, they are directly required to report tree plantings to us. So that's where we get a large majority of our data, right? But that doesn't mean we don't want other tree planting data. In order to achieve 5 million trees, we need to be tracking all types of tree plantings across the state. So a huge part of this effort for this year is to really engage independent landowners and local jurisdictions so we can start getting onto that annual round of submitting tree planting data similar to the sister agencies that we're already directly working with. Now, what does it mean to submit tree planting data? So what the 5 Million Tree Initiative did when we launched our program last year, we had developed a hub site and tree planting survey tree tracker tool in order to plant tree planting data. And there's 2 ways this is done. So you can see this GIF or GIF, however you want to pronounce it, that's looping, that's showing how we are capturing tree plantings. And there's 2 ways we do this. We use something called either a polygon or point survey. So we ask landowners to either send us the individual tree point locations or instead send us large geographic regions that capture the scale of these tree plantings, right? And we also have this Register Your Tree survey available online. And we also have it as an app that uses ArcGIS. And this is the shorthand URL, mde.maryland.gov/5mtrack, that directly takes you to this tree planting tool. I also want to specifically call out that for a lot of these more well-established tree planting organizations, so for example, other counties that we work with, they already have this tree planting data already assimilated into like an Excel database, or if they have their own kind of georeference system. And what we can do is we can batch upload that data for them. So if you're in this similar boat, you don't have to go through this survey point. You can contact us directly and we can work to make sure you don't have to do that big redundant work of uploading the tree planting data again. So this is a closer snapshot of what the survey is actually capturing. There's a couple of other things that we're interested in collecting. And if you're interested, you can scroll through the survey more, but I decided to just do a quick snapshot of these 2, as this is really the core of what we're trying to get with the 5 Million Trees program. And on the left, you can see how if you're choosing to do a point location, you can directly put the lat and longitude of the tree planting, or alternatively, you would do a polygon, and that's as simple as just drawing on the map the area where the tree plantings are. We want to know information like when the tree was planted, right? What if the tree is being planted by a funding program? So for this case, that'd be Chesapeake Bay Trust's urban tree program. The types of tree species that you're planting, because again, only native tree species are eligible, and how you are measuring these trees. And this kinds of information is really important to help us verify that these trees were planted, and also make sure that we are maintaining these tree plantings. We don't want to just get all these trees in the ground and then let it be. So, and when we're collecting this data internally, we are doing some quality assurance and quality checking. And part of that is we want to be very transparent and share with the public what's going on, right? So on our 5 Million Trees hub site, we have a live dashboard that tracks tree planting progress. And on this dashboard, there's a couple of different things going on. So on the left-hand side, you can see that this is a planting map. And on the planting map, and you can zoom in and out in different areas of Maryland, for the purposes of this presentation, I decided to just zoom into this area in Baltimore City. And you can see how these large-scale tree plantings are these polygon areas, and then the individual tree plantings are these smaller tree planting point data. Again, this is based on how the user submits the data. On the top, we have the total trees planted towards the 5 million trees goal, and then again, how the portion of those trees that are in an urban underserved area. We are also able to see the amount of trees planted by county. So if you keep scrolling on the dashboard, you'll see PG County, and then you'll also be able to zoom directly to PG County and see how many trees are there. And this is just a really great way for us to be transparent about the data and just see where we are in terms of progress. The next iteration of this dashboard and also the data is we are planning on making the 5 billion trees data publicly available to download on top of this dashboard. So those are the next steps as it relates to the data needs. So as I keep talking about this 5 million trees program, why is it important, right? And just for a bit of a very brief background on the state's climate goals, we recently announced a net zero emissions goal by 2045. So that essentially means we want the state of Maryland to be emitting the same amount of carbon that's being sequestered or offset. And we set this really ambitious goal to get 60% reductions by 2031. So one of the ways we can do this is really leveraging nature-based solutions like tree plantings. So through the 5 Million Trees program, we're able to help Maryland stay on track to achieve these carbon mitigation goals. So this includes things like also realizing the co-benefits from these trees. So that's reducing the urban heat island effect, really investing in sustainable forestry management practices, and overall just greening the community to enable as much people as possible to realize these co-benefits from tree plantings. So again, as I keep talking about the initiative, this is the direct link to our hub site and also shorthand URL. It's the same, except instead of 5M track, it's 5M trees. And on the hub site, if you do some digging, there's resources to get involved. We have different kinds of communication materials like flyers if you want to share more about the program. And internally, we are about to release a new program/resource assistance application. So that application will basically help landowners figure out, I want to plant trees, what are the programs and funding opportunities available for me? So that's forthcoming in our resource library. And that is the end of my presentation. I think at this point, we can turn it over to Leanna and then take questions after her presentation.
Sure.
Yeah.
That works. Thank you, Marie.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen. So I think, Marie, you may need to.
I don't know
you may need
why.
to stop sharing.
Yeah, let me see if, does that, okay.
Okay, now let me
Got it.
try. Yes, excellent. All right, so I'm sharing with you from a slide deck that was recently used at our information session. So please pardon me if I stumble upon a few things that came out of that date, but the information is the same. And I'm really glad that Marie was able to provide you all with an overview of all of the different tree planting initiatives happening in the state. We have a huge goal, a huge task. We have to reach 5 million by 2031. We need everyone. We need the Forestry Board. And actually, you are one of the important eligible entities to apply for our grant program. So I'm going to now talk to you about the Urban Trees Grant Program, which, as Marie mentioned, is a piece of the overall initiative. So first, I'll introduce the trust and myself. I'll give you an overview of the grant program. I'll tell you about the application process and the resources we provide, and then answer questions that you have. The Chesapeake Bay Trust is a nonprofit organization that empowers community groups with resources to improve the natural resources in their communities. And this grant program is a partnership with the state of Maryland and the 5 Million Trees Initiative. And new this year, we have additional funding from BG&E, which will go towards sponsoring another component of our program, which is exciting in that it's going to add a little, an extra category that you can ask funds for. And my name is Leanna Gamori-Rubin. I'm the Senior Program Officer, and I manage this grant program. As Marie mentioned, this grant program comes out of the Tree Solutions Now Act of 2021. Its goal is to plant 500,000 native trees in urban underserved areas by 2031. We have already had 2 years of the grant program. We are in the middle of our 3rd year. So if you are working on applications, that's fantastic. They're due next Thursday. So if you're not yet working, you might try to scramble to meet that deadline of next Thursday. Otherwise, don't worry. We will be annually having this grant program until our program closes in 2031. To date, we've funded 77 projects and awarded $18.6 million, resulting in the planting of approximately 40,000 native trees. And as I mentioned, we have a ways to go to get to 500,000. So why urban trees? As Marie started to say, when we plant trees in our urban areas, we get a host of benefits. They're really a cost-effective way to get a lot of different benefits. We improve the health of local waterways because trees absorb stormwater and flood water. They mitigate flooding. We know we have flooding issues in a lot of areas around the state. Trees improve air quality, which benefits human health. They provide wildlife habitat to make cities exciting places to live. They cool our cities down and reduce urban heat island effect. We also know that areas that have a higher tree canopy are associated with lower crime rates, higher property values. And we know that when we invest in trees, we see new local green jobs in the forestry industry. And we also have stronger communities that can gather and recreate and have leisure together in park areas like this. So by planting trees, we get so many different benefits. As Marie mentioned, we have a map that we use. I'm going to skip over this because she explained it so well, but this is what we use to identify areas that are eligible. If it's not in an orange area on that mapping tool, it cannot be funded by our program. But if it is, we really welcome applications. So who is eligible to apply? Nonprofit organizations, schools and institutions of higher ed, service, youth and civic groups, neighborhood and community associations, counties, municipalities, and Forest Conservancy District boards like you. These are the eligible entities because this grant program is really designed to engage the community from the ground up. We want applications from people who live in these communities, care about these communities, are connected to these communities, and are best positioned to identify where trees are needed and work with everyone to design planting plans that people will be excited about and will have the most benefit. Eligible project sites include street tree projects, vacant lots, institutional grounds, other public or private property. When you are thinking about the different considerations of a site, they all have similar things that you should be considering. So first, you should be considering permission. What permission is needed to plant on that site? Sometimes you need to get, if it's a public right of way, you may need to check with the municipality to get a permit. If it's a private lot, like a vacant lot, you'll need to show permission from the owner of that lot. Same thing with any institution. So you'll want to demonstrate that you have the permission of to plant in that area. You'll need to contact Miss Utility. Any project that involves excavating or digging in the state requires contacting Miss Utility to make sure that there's no utilities underground that could present issues. You'll want to consider power lines up ahead. This might impact the tree varieties that you select. And you'll want to consider how much prep will need to be done in order to make that site ready. So, for example, in a street like the one in the picture, you may need to create a pit by breaking up concrete. Sometimes you might need to do stump grinding. So all of these will impact the costs that you build into your request and are important factors to consider. And in addition, you'll want to get letters of support from any of the property owners around the area, or anyone who's going to be impacted by that tree, because we know that if some neighbors are really excited about a tree and they plant it, but other neighbors who are affected or are close to that tree didn't want it, then it's a higher likelihood that that tree will either be vandalized, not cared for, or be taken down. And we really don't want to see that. So we ask that you consider how you're going to get everybody on board to make sure that that tree is going to be a sustainable planting. Project timeline. Our projects have 3 phases that you can build into your grant request. The first is planning and outreach. The second is implementation, and the third is maintenance. In your first phase of planning and outreach, you can build in costs and activities related to making sure those permits are secured, working with nurseries, getting your contractors ready, door knocking to connect with your community. We know that successful planting has a lot of legwork that needs to go on first. And so, of course, we encourage you to do a lot of that before you submit your grant proposal, but you don't need to have all of it finished. You can communicate what you've done to date, and then build in time in the beginning of the grant for this first phase to finish it or to do more of it and to line things up. So consider what might be useful to make sure that you're ready to begin planting. Phase 2, implementation. This is the work to prepare the site and plant the trees. This can include invasive species removal, the labor and the supplies related to the tree planting. And then as soon as that tree is planted, you begin phase 3, which is maintenance for 2 years. So a typical grant might take 3 years. We require that 2 years of maintenance are completed for these trees, because we know that young trees are very vulnerable, and especially when they're planted in urban areas. And we would hate, as much as you as project leaders, to do all of this work and invest all of this time and money into planting trees that we then don't care for enough for them to survive long term. So we know from research that that 2 years of maintenance care is really important. It includes watering, mulching, protections from deer if that's applicable, and weeding. So if you have volunteers who want to do that labor, you can build that into your proposal. You can also contract for it, and you can build in contractors to do that work for you. So that's also really important to consider. I also want to let you know that we have a lot of flexibility in our grants. So even if you submit a grant that has, for example, 1 season for phase 1, 1 season for phase 2, and then the 2 years of maintenance, and then it turns out you need more time for planning and outreach, or you need your planting to spread across 2 seasons, we can make changes like that. You would submit what's called an award revision request, and we can work with you to adjust certain things even after the grant has been awarded. Eligible expenses. This is the Excel spreadsheet that you will use when you're completing your grant application. It's called the financial management spreadsheet. This is where you will detail out all the different costs that you anticipate for your grant project. Eligible costs cover supplies for tree planting, site preparation, personnel, and other expenses and materials related to planning, implementing, and maintaining tree planting projects in underserved areas. So all of your costs have to very much directly result in planting of trees. Now, in the past, we had some grantees communicate to us that there were some limitations they were experiencing that were hindering their projects. For example, those funds from the state can't go towards food. They can't go towards any other types of plant material. So no flowers or no shrubs. Or other types of plant materials. But now, because we have some private funding available, if you want to incorporate food, flowers, something like a bench, just other components to your project that your community would be excited about, but aren't directly resulting in a tree, you can request up to $2,000 as a separate piece of your application for those costs. And so here's some more examples of those eligible expenses. For that phase 1 planning and outreach, you can ask for funds for activities like meetings to get your different landowners together and engaged, tree pit creation and stump removal. For that phase 2, as I mentioned, trees, the labor, the protections and mulch. And then for phase 3, labors and supplies. You can also build in stipends for things like administering the grant, costs related to administration. So really think about what is going to be needed to implement a successful project. Now, to give you a sense of requests, here's some ballpark figures that aren't in any way entirely constraining, but might help give you a sense of what are typical requests. So up to $5,000 is our mini grant program, and that's rolling year round, and that should plant about 15 trees. Up to about $15,000 might plant 25 to 100 trees in a single site. $45,000 might result in 75 to 300 trees. $200,000 for projects that serve multiple communities for 300 to 1,000 trees, or perhaps up to $1 million for projects that serve communities across entire counties of 2,000 to 6,000 trees. A good benchmark to consider is that we seek for grant projects to result in budgets of about $600 or less per tree. And we're going to do that by just dividing the amount requested by the number of trees, because we are measuring our outcome is native trees in ground. So that figure can be helpful to consider when you're incorporating all your costs and where you may want to offset costs to be able to make room for other costs. Now, your requests can exceed this amount. We do sometimes have proposals that are higher than $600 per tree. You would just have to explain that or make the case for that in your proposal. And of course, if you can make it less than that, that's fantastic. But ask for what you need. As Marie mentioned, we are required to register all trees planted with our funds to the tree tracker. So that is a piece of the grant, is that we will ask that you work with us, work with Marie. We're here to assist you in making sure those trees get entered into the tracker. And we use that data, as she was saying, for all sorts of valuable reasons, including providing services to those trees. The application process, we encourage you to read the request for proposals on the website, identify and connect with any project partners, compile your application pieces and supporting documents, and submit them by 4 p.m. on March 7th, which is next Thursday. An application has 3 pieces. The first is a narrative in which you answer several questions to tell us about your community, about your project, etc. Supporting documents, where you have documents for everything that you describe in the narrative, such as those letters of commitment, permissions, maps with the planting sites, and any estimates. And then the third piece is the budget, where you fill out that spreadsheet with the costs that you anticipate. We have a lot of resources to support you on our website. We have a native tree guide that was made in partnership with the University of Maryland Extension. You can see a screenshot of it here. Those are native trees. We have a list of nurseries that you can contact to get quotes or to work with them, a list of tree care providers, examples of past projects if you want to see some of our grants of how much was awarded and what that project, the description of that project, as well as the project leader. So you can contact them if you want more information. And then maintenance guides and maintenance plan templates to support you in planning for maintenance. This is what our website looks like. If you go there, you can click here to find our RFP. I'll make sure our website's in the chat when I finish speaking. You can start your application on our page. If you scroll down, you've got all of our resources, our past awarded projects, and then you can click here to find a native plant nursery to begin working with. There are lots of resources on the Chesapeake Bay Trust website about how to apply for our grant programs. And this is what our grant system looks like when you log in to create an application. And here's the timeline. So after submitting your application on March 7th, we will process them and assemble our technical review committee of experts who will score the applications and make recommendations for who should be approved and how much. You can be approved for partial funding. These recommendations are presented to the Board of Trustees in May. And then in July, we will send out our award letters. If you receive an award letter, again, for either full funding or partial funding, you would review your letter, sign it, and send it back to us, and then you can receive your first check to begin that planning and outreach phase as early as August. And if you get a decline, we encourage you to reach out to us and we can schedule a debrief in which we would provide you with feedback from the TRC and recommendations for how you can improve your application and potentially resubmit or try a different program at the trust. And that's it. You can contact me, Leanna, or my colleague, Bridget, who also works on the program, at the contact information below. Which I'll put in the chat as well.
Thank you both for sharing. Awesome
Yeah,
opportunities. And then
and
Marie, I think you had a question directed towards you in the chat. Looks like you're on it.
yes, so I was able to pull up an example. So I'm going to share my screen now really quickly, and then we can get into the general Q&A. So I quickly just pulled up the dashboard. Again, that's mde.maryland.gov/5mtrees. And I zoomed in to PG County. Again, you can see here's the current progress to date. I do want to say that this number is significantly much higher. We've had a couple latency issues as it relates to the QA/QC process, but we're hopeful that by spring planting season, we can get this update to be either this month or next month. So what this tree planting example is showing is this was a planting done by one of the Urban Trees grantees, the Defensoras de la Cuenca program. And you can see that they planted about 54 trees. They did a variety of different tree species. So in terms of these tree species, we also internally track this. We also see when they planted the tree. So this was in December of 2022. We see where it is, Prince George's County, the acreage of the tree planting, how it was submitted. So this particular group used the survey 123 polygon and exclusively. We also collect information on maintenance activities. So you can see they reported doing watering and mulching. And yeah, so this is an example of how these trees are being tracked. And then just nearby, you can even see here's another tree planting here in PG County. Here's another one. And we can even zoom out and see PG County as a whole. I will say that it takes a while for the tree planting data to load. So from just the first scan, it will take like a few seconds to load, but as you scroll through the map, you'll see that the polygons and points are starting to pop up, especially more as you zoom in. So that's an example, working example of the dashboard looking at PG County.
Thank you, Marie. All right, we'll open it up for questions. And Gary, I should have had you introduce yourself at the beginning. I think it would be helpful for folks to know you.
Sure. I'll introduce myself. My name is Gary Allen. I'm the president of the Maryland Forestry Foundation. We coordinate the work of all the forestry boards across Maryland, as well as plant 5 million trees on private forest land under the Healthy Forest, Healthy Waters program, which results in about 88,000 trees a year for this program.
Thanks, Gary. All right, Ms. Dickerson, I see your hand up. You've got a question.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, the Robeson for, I had a question because the January and February 1st, 2 sessions of this seminar was delayed because of the snow. Is the application process, is there any way they could push the date back? Because I'm just finding out that the deadline is March 7th.
Fortunately, we can't push that
Okay.
deadline back. I'm sorry. But the mini grant program is rolling. So if that is appealing to you, and it's going to soon go up to 10,000. So if you want to start with a small project, that's rolling year round. Otherwise, we'll be back next year.
Okay. You said the mini grant is, can you repeat that again?
Yes. So we have our mini grant program, which right now is at $5,000. So if you have a tree planting project that is what we consider small in scale and $5,000 is enough, you can apply at any time throughout the year for that. And we are going to raise that soon. I don't know exactly when, but it's going to raise to 10,000. So if that's the size of your project, you can apply throughout the year. But if you think you're planning a larger scale project, then March 7th is going to be the deadline this year and pretty much the same one next year. And the grant will reopen in December.
Okay, the grant reopens in December. Okay. Thank you.
Do you want to provide some additional detail about the BGE component and what it adds to the program and how it amplifies or adds a different dimension? You just touched on it lightly. I wondered if you would explain a little bit more in depth about the options that it offers that might otherwise be available.
Yes, we're really excited about that BG&E money because we've heard from a lot of people that, we hate having to say, oh, we can't provide reimbursement for your food funds. A lot of people have said there's just a few costs. It's called costs associated with community greening. And it's really a way that we're using a little bit of private funding to provide some more flexibility to people who are organizing really exciting, amazing community-based projects. But the money from the state is very restricted to things that result in trees. So the three examples that come to mind from working with grantees are if you want to purchase food for any of your events, you can build that into your budget. If you want to art or beautification, flowers, you can build that in. And like I mentioned, a bench or other features of your project that aren't exactly trees, but when your community group is envisioning your space, we know that sometimes we work, for example, with churches who are imagining a peace garden. And part of that are trees, but there's other elements to their vision. Those are the kind of things that you can now request up to $2,000 for with more flexibility that it's not just trees.
Oh, very helpful. I'm writing in the chat simply because I don't want you to forget about it. There's been a lot of history that led up to this law. Obviously, I helped work on the law and worked on the position that you guys now hold, as a matter of fact. There was in the early part of of this past decade, early 2010 to 2015, I just don't remember the exact year, out of the Baltimore Forest Service Group, an urban greening document that provided examples of how to do urban greening projects, particularly focused in on the Baltimore area. I'd like to encourage both of you to take a look at it and to do a little research on it, because it's a resource that I think you will find ought to be on your websites, okay? It's that excellent because it talks about how to convert vacant lots, parking lots, streetscapes, backyards, multifamily dwellings. It provides a lot of small case studies that talks about how these things can be achieved with multiple green infrastructure benefits, including even one that involves a food forest on a very mini scale, which obviously is not something you've mentioned extensively, but it would be interesting to know if you've even received proposals on that, because I tend to think it's something you'd want to encourage in some urban areas as simply a way of really getting a local community excited about a local project and site. All of those things, there are at least a dozen examples in that publication. I think you'll find it very interesting. I hope you are able to find it, and I'll do a little further research and make sure I can follow up to make sure the resource is still available.
Could you say the name one more time?
It's
Gary?
called Urban Greening in the Baltimore area, but don't hold me to that title, but the word greening is in the title. I'll guarantee you that. The head of the Baltimore Forest Service Group, I'm sure would be familiar with it. His name escapes me right this second, but you'll know him immediately when it comes up. He's excellent. There's 2 or 3 resource people of the U.S. Forest Service there that are very excellent resource people for the kind of projects that you folks are working on funding.
Thank you, Gary. Alex, I see you've got a question.
Yep. Thank you, James. Thank you, Lavinia, Liana and Marie. They were both great presentations. I hope we can get copies of these presentations. There were a few slides that I wanted to get some additional information from, but I know due to time constraints, you can only spend so much time on each slide. If that could be facilitated through James, I'm sure everybody would love to get copies of these. One of the questions that I had, I think Leanna, you talked about native trees are required for these projects. And I was wondering if there was any thought given to climate change with the fact that we're planting these trees now, and we hope that these trees will last 50, 60, 100 plus years into the maturity to continue the increasing tree canopy in the state of Maryland. Was there any thought given what trees, given, again, the change in climate and other indicators like precipitation within Maryland and the mid-Atlantic, if we're looking at trees that will be able to have a better survivability rate, 50, 60, or 100 years from now with the climate change that's occurring?
Yes, thank you for that question. That is coming up more and more. I will say that we have a partnership, or we work very closely with a professor in plant ecology who runs a lot of work around tree selection with us, Dr. Karen Berghardt. And she developed that list that we're currently using. That connects to what Marie works on the website. We do discuss this periodically. It comes up fairly frequently at our meetings. So this program is evolving in real time. I think we have a list we're going off of right now of native trees, but rest assured, we continue to raise this question and consider what we need to do to make sure it fits the changing climate.
Yeah, thank you for that answer.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, James.
Go ahead, Dan. Dan, you are muted.
Okay. I had a question for two things about Marie's presentation. One is I like the mention of sustainable forestry practices in the state. I think sometimes we don't look at the forestry, managing forests and how that's all the good things that come with that for your watershed and for economics. But in your slide number 3, you had a map just the Baltimore City area. Do you have a map that also would have Prince George's County on it, please?
Yeah, so what I can do when I share the slides, I can send a screenshot of the PG County area. I can also develop a separate map of just PG County, separate from this presentation if you're interested, just to see what kinds of tree plantings are already existing in the county.
I think that would help, and we might find some smaller areas that are, in need of the trees.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And Leanna, just a comment for you with Chesapeake Bay Trust. This is a really good presentation, has it? Have you all contacted the Federated Garden Clubs of Maryland?
No.
Because I know some of those different. There's one in each county in Baltimore City, and they might. There's some folks in that I understand are very interested in trees. But it's just a thought. Thank you.
It's a great thought, and I would love to follow up with it to get connected. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Sam, I just wrote down that org. We're always trying to capture as much tree plantings as we can.
Got it.
I've got a question and just a follow-up for Dan. So Dan, with the tool that Marie shared with us, we can zoom in and look at Prince George's County as well. And I know you're on your phone, so you might not be able to do that.
Well, I'm looking at it on my PC, but I'm kind of challenged or some of that, getting on some of that stuff. But yeah, that'd be good, James, just to have it. I think to show some spots. I'm thinking a lot of places in here in Prince George's that are inside the Beltway. Morningside, Forest Heights, District Heights, areas like that.
Yeah, a lot of those sites are highlighted. So my question for the two of you, do you have any examples of forestry boards engaging with either one of you all in your projects?
Yeah, so we have started to talk with the Baltimore City Forestry Board as they're very active. So they are aware of the program. I think our biggest challenge right now is getting all the other county forestry boards on board. One of the outreach initiatives that we are in the weeds of preparing is a couple of different tree planting workshops, so similar to this one, where we get all of the county forestry boards in one call, one meeting, whether it be, just so that we can get everyone on the same page and ideally start to develop some kind of strategy or work plan to get data submitted on either it be a biannual or annual basis. Yes, would very much appreciate that, Gary.
And I'm going to echo that. We have not yet received any applications from a forestry board. Maybe they're coming this round, I'm not sure, but for the first 2 years, we have not had any grantees who are forestry boards. And as you see, you're one of the eligible entities. So that's a great suggestion to target our outreach to forestry boards next year.
And I saw where Gary posted in the chat that he could help, and he's the perfect person for that.
We're having a summit of all the boards in June for the first time in 13 years.
Oh, wow.
Touch with me and by the way, Marie Ann's very familiar with this work, and the trust is knowledgeable in a broad sense, but not specifically. The dates will be the 11th, 12th, and 13th. James will be hearing more about it too in the coming week. So put that on your calendars and we'll talk about how we can work into the program, okay?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Great.
We'll have the secretary and possibly the governor and many others there.
So any more questions for our presenters?
Just thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to get the word out. These are my favorite kinds of things, engaging with local groups.
Yep, feel free to contact us, folks who are on the call. At the Chesapeake Bay Trust, we're really happy to support you in developing applications.
Thank you. So Marie, I've got your slides. Thank you for sending those. Leanna, I don't know if you emailed them in the last hour or two, but if you want to send me those, I'll get them out to our registrants here in the next day or two. Well, thank you both for being here, and I want to thank all of our guests as well. We appreciate your time. Hopefully this was helpful, and I think we all want more trees in Maryland, so let's try to make that happen.
Thank you, everyone.
Very helpful.
Bye.
Thanks for presenting.
Thank you.
Of course.
Good
Thank
job.
you very much.
Gary
job.
and Dan, I'm going to turn the recording off. Gary and Dan, if you all can stay on for a quick second, that would be helpful to me.
I'm here.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.